What is going on YouTube? Chrono here and welcome back to another PSO2 video. So today we're going to be talking about the new weapons that we got with the 24-man limited quest, the Justitean weapons. But before we jump into that, if you're new to the channel, my name is Chrono. I primarily cover PSO2 content. Would much appreciate a subscribe as we work our way towards that 10k mark, hopefully by the end of this year. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this. So the counterpart to the Neos A weapons, the Neos J weapons, are finally here. And I guess I'd probably call them like the sibling to the Neos A weapons, the Neos J weapons, because really they're not at odds. It's just the Neos J is a different facet of how you would use it. Also, I'm aware there are Neos Astria and Neos Justitean. I'm not going to be saying that this entire video. So Neos Astria is Neos A, Neos Justitean is Neos J. But that being said, the Neos J weapon is finally here, and man, I'll be honest, it pretty much fits into exactly what I thought it would, but when I first saw it and saw its values, I didn't know if it was going to be able to reach that. So let's go ahead and jump into how this is exactly going to work, starting by talking about mostly how we'll do our comparisons. Two major things will be changing based on how we did this beforehand. First off, we're going to be comparing the Neos J against a light weak enemy to start with versus the other weapons. The other weapons in this category will be the Gunblaze, the Kyklophis, and the Neos A weapon. The second change is I will be changing up how I compare the Gunblaze specifically. I heard you guys in the comments, and a lot of people really wanted it to be a more realistic comparison of what they would be able to manage, so we'll be using the comparison or the values of 80% uptime on the Gunblaze potential. I personally like to look at the best case scenario for a weapon to compare it and give it an accurate comparison, but I totally understand where you guys are coming from, where a lot of you are not really going to have that 100% uptime, so you'd rather have it more, of a real life comparison for yourselves. I recommend if something doesn't meet your fancy when it comes to the comparisons, just take a look at the video description. There'll be a link over to Cakewalk's damage calculator. You're more than welcome to go ahead and set it up yourself. And if you're ever curious on how that works or how to do that, I'll try to remember to leave a link in the video description as well to my explanation of how that worked and how to use it. If not, you'll probably see a pinned link in the comments, or you'll see it in the video description, wherever it happens to be. You'll find a way. But I do have a video on the channel about how to do this, so in case you are curious, you can always set it up for yourself. So let's go ahead and jump into this. To start things off, we need to talk about the actual Neos J weapons. First thing you'll probably notice is its abysmal base damage comparatively to its Neos A counterpart at 671. Now, this is offset by the fact that it has a light element on it, so it does get an increase of 15% damage to enemies that are weak against light. For those of you who aren't aware, you actually also get a 10% increase of damage to enemies that aren't weak against light, so it's only about a 5% increase over enemies that are weak against light, but they kind of offset this by, I guess, adding a light element value damage overall to your weapon, which causes you to also cause elemental downs, which I was unaware of until you guys helped me realize that in the comments. Essentially, the elemental weapons do apply status elements, which is very nice. Well, I say status elements, more like elemental downs specifically, but only against enemies that are weak against that element. So basically it applies more or less exactly the same way that a Force would, or a Tactor would, or a Jet Boots Bouncer would, but it, of course, is at a much lower value. I digress. We're rambling on. Let's move on to the actual weapon itself. So let's talk about its potential. The potential reads exactly the same as the Neos A weapon. If you're unaware what that is, potency plus 32%, photon blast gauge charge when attacking plus 25%, and PP consumption reduced by 15% for 90 seconds after using a photon blast. That means the first two things apply at all times, and the third applies only after using a photon blast. Basically making it a weapon that you want to try to get your PB either as quick as possible and use it as often as possible, or you want to make sure you have it at crucial specific times to output as much damage as possible. Either way, it's a fantastic potential, and honestly, it's kind of crazy how strong it is. So with that out of the way, how do the comparisons look? Again, if you missed it earlier or you skipped ahead in the video, this is going to be a Neos J with its light element against a light weak enemy versus the Kyklophis, the Gunblaze at 80% uptime, and a Neos A weapon. Now we are doing these with no fixa on the Neos J and the Neos A. The other weapons will talk about their fixes respectively and why we are. But know that the Neos J weapon specifically is able to be multied with Neos A weapons, as well as is able to be sold. The whole Neos J being able to be multied with Neos A is an interesting concept that we'll discuss in a different video, but the short version is wonder how the actual process of the elemental damage when having the Neos J weapon as the sub weapon on the Neos A weapon as the base weapon for a multi-weapon is actually going to function. I'm sure some of you guys who caught on to that are probably scrambling to either find out the answer or test it yourselves, or possibly DM me because you already know what the answer is. I look forward to seeing those DMs or those comments. Anyway, we've stalled long enough. So when we're looking at these weapons, when we're looking at Neos J, Kuklofis attack 3, which of course that's what you're going to be getting your Kuklofis at. If you want to do comparisons of anything lower, I would recommend you do it on your own, but attack 3 Kuklofis is behind Neos J against light weak enemy by about 3.98%. Moving on, we have the Gunblaze. Now we're going to be doing Gunblaze to start at Fatal 3 because realistically a base Gunblaze isn't something you should be using right now anyway. It was a nice in-between weapon, but the idea is that you want to be pushing forward to something else. So anyway, so at Fatal 3, the Gunblaze with 80% uptime, you're still being behind by about 0.66%. It's pretty close, but it is still technically behind for a fixed weapon. Moving on, we also have a Gunblaze 80% uptime at Fatal 5. So best case scenario for quite some time is only ahead by 0.78%, so not even a whole percent. And for those curious of the other fixes, I mean, I mentioned this in videos beforehand, but the actual tier goes Fatal being the strongest, Termina being the second strongest, and Attack being the weakest. So just kind of slot those in on your own time and see how that works out. So the final comparison we're looking at is Neos A, again with no fixa, is still behind by about 1.45%. So if you happen to get a hold of your Neos A weapon, augment it and set it up, and are curious, hey, should I pick up my Neos J for fighting against the new falls? I mean, the answer is technically yes. It is still behind. But it isn't behind by a large amount. So if you wanted to hold out for a good fixa, or if you happen to luck out and get a good fixa on your Neos A, you can, know that your Neos J weapon with no fixa is likely not ahead, as long as it's not like fixa attack. But I'll go ahead and leave up a description, or not a description, but a comparison on screen of just the damage chart to kind of see what we've got going on there. You guys can kind of see what the comparisons are on your own. This is all considering my current gear. Well, technically this is all considering best in slot gear that you can make and set up, but it's very close to the gear that I'm currently using. And to be honest, it's mostly the same thing when you're looking at comparisons of percentages between weapons, because the only thing that changes between the new best in slot and what it was previously was it's only potency. Yeah, it's only potency that changes, and it's like 1% potency. You're basically swapping out a Gigas for the new HAL Finale and then some HP and PP. So nothing too crazy going on there, but as you guys can see the comparisons above, go ahead and pause the video if you want to go ahead and look over them a little bit more thoroughly. And that's it. And that's pretty much everything I got for you guys today. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comments below, or join Discord. Feel free to DM me personally. Ask in Discord. People are pretty on top of answering questions. If not, I get to them as soon as I possibly can. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to keep up with more, and I'll see you all next time. Take care, everyone. Peace out.